All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight to the first virtual gathering of 2024. We're so excited to have you here. And as always, I wanted to start with a brief introduction of the team. So Aurora, Anna, and I are the folks behind the computers, behind the supply drop-offs, and this whole project wouldn't be possible without the collaboration between the Darby Creek Valley Association and Willistown Conservation Trust and the awesome folks that I get to work with on a daily basis. So Aurora is the mastermind who helps coordinate and organize everyone. Do you want to say hi, Aurora?
Hi, everyone. I love working with Lauren and Anna. They are the best team. So excited to have all of you working with us because honestly, it's the volunteers that are doing all the on the ground work every month and couldn't ask for a better team.
Here. It's true. You guys are doing the hard work. And Anna is our data organizational guru who creates the maps and tools that we have been using, and she's going to be introducing some really cool new pieces for our website. So Anna, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone. You'll be hearing from me a little bit more later, but it's good to see all the faces. It's always fun to put faces to names, especially for some of our newer volunteers. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks. So just a heads up, we've got an awesome event coming up this weekend on Saturday. Aurora, do you want to talk a little bit about the 40th anniversary DCVA celebration?
Yeah, so this Saturday, we are in a different location this year with the Swarthmore Friends Meeting House. I hear it's an amazing space, and because it's DCVA's 40th anniversary, it's kind of more big and special than usual. We have some excellent speakers, State Rep Greg Vitale, Delaware County Council Member Eileen Schaefer, Dr. John Jackson from Stroud. In addition, we're going to have like some yummy food available and a silent auction with some really exciting things. I happen to know a couple board members that we have a beach house and a house in the Poconos long weekends that you could bid on, but also some things like gift baskets, wine and cheese, Wawa merch, stuff like that. So it's going to be a great educational, fun time, fun to like see people that we don't often get to see, but that we're working with. So I hope to see you there.
Aurora, is it still open if somebody wanted to sign up?
Yeah, last I heard, we still had like 10 spots open.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so please sign up and grab those spots.
Yeah, well, I signed up, but I was just thinking somebody else maybe, Okay.
Yeah, definitely encourage them to sign up.
All right, thanks, Aurora. And I wanted to share there are some really great opportunities coming up to engage with the Clean Water Act. So we did review all of the survey feedback. Thank you so much to everyone who took the time to fill out the survey. If you haven't yet, it was in the most recent email reminder for sampling, and you can always fill that out. We get a notification when someone fills it out, and it is anonymous. So one of the pieces that came up was an interest in learning more about how the data that you're collecting is actually making an impact. And one of the coolest opportunities is to engage with the Clean Water Act. So this is a pretty clunky piece of legislature, but the success of the Clean Water Act hinges on the engagement of public participation. So community members have opportunities to provide feedback during open comment periods, but more directly, there is an opportunity to submit our data directly to the state to contribute to the biannual integrated report. So every 2 years, the state releases a report on the status of our waterways. And this data is collected by state researchers, academics, nonprofit partners, and critically volunteers. So the 2024 report was just released a couple weeks ago, and I will share that link in the follow-up email to this meeting with the recording call. And we have come up with a goal of trying to submit the Darby Creek Community Science data for the 2026 report. So that data will need to be formatted and submitted by June 2025. And this submission would have very real impacts on helping to identify funding opportunities in the Darby-Cobbs waterway to increase restoration opportunities throughout the whole watershed. And help elevate the need for connectivity, education, and communication throughout the watershed at a state level. So this is something that I think is absolutely attainable. Our data is very high quality and is something, if you're interested in learning more, I could talk your ear off about it. But we'll probably be asking for a little bit of help and support when we get closer sometime in 2025. So if anyone is interested in learning more about the process, about some of the data formatting, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll be happy to loop you in. Additionally, I mentioned those open comment periods. Anytime there's a piece of legislature that's coming up or being challenged, there's an opportunity to provide feedback. So when these opportunities pop up, I'll be sharing them in the e-blasts as links to further information so you can read up on whatever the comment period is on. Recently, there was something about increasing the dissolved oxygen levels in the Delaware watershed in the main stem. Unfortunately, that comment period closed yesterday, but it's a really nice way to have make your voice heard and advocate for your waterway without having to go down to Capitol Hill or call anyone. You could just sign on to a letter. So I'll be sharing those things. Feel free to engage with them if you want. Feel free to pass on them. There's no pressure, just shared opportunities. Okay, any questions on any of the Cold Water Act advocacy stuff that might be coming up in the future?
Lauren, you said we're not going to start putting our data in until the 2026. Is there a reason we are not doing it now?
Yes, so the integrated report comes out every other year. And so it just came out for 2024.
Okay.
And the deadline for submission for 2026 is in mid 2025. So I'm thinking it'll make the most sense to just submit all of the data together at once, all the way back to from 2021, and then get feedback from the state. So I'm hoping we've spoken with the DEP contact for the integrated report before, and they were very interested in the Darby Creek Community Science data. So there might be a little bit of legwork just to make sure that all of the data is up to the quality that they're looking for in the lead up. It didn't make sense to try and like really just hash everything together for this last comment or report period. But it'll be the whole data set.
Nice.
Great question. All right. So now we're gonna turn it over to Anna, who's gonna run us through an amazing new development with our data dashboard.
I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen now? Yeah, cool. All right, so this is our Darby Creek website. Hopefully you've all at some point gotten a chance to take a look at this. It's a really great resource. It has links to download all of your data sheets. It has all the protocols. And it's also where we've been uploading all of the data that you are collecting. And so based on some of the survey feedback, one of the things we heard is that the way the data are displayed right now, it's a little bit hard to read, which makes a lot of sense. We can take a look at a graph, and it made sense maybe to do it this way when we had 3 or 4 sites, but now that we're up to about 30, the dots get really small, the colors are really close together. So we wanted to come up with a better way to do that. But before we did that, we wanted to also make sure that you could actually tell where all the sites were. So to that end, we've incorporated an interactive map onto the About page. So with this map, you can zoom in to see all the sites. They're all labeled. You might not see the labels until you zoom in further. And then you can click on site and it will tell you a little bit of information, the site ID, the location, its status, whether or not we have some sites that are not currently active anymore as volunteers have had to step back, how long it's been sampled, the percent impervious surface coverage, so how much of the watershed upstream is covered by buildings, roads, sidewalks, anything that water can't pass through, and then the latitude and longitude. So we just wanted to make it interactive so you could take a look and see what sites are nearby and where else this research is happening. So that was one of the big changes we made. And the other big change is integrating what we're calling the data dashboard. So this dashboard has kind of 3 sections. There is a map, which is right here. It's the same map you see on the front page. You can click on the sites and learn about them. And then there are graphs, and the graphs show all the data that has been collected so far. And so with this, there are 3 tabs. Right now we have graphs for water temperature, specific conductivity, and chloride concentration. And on each graph, I added a line that was the maximum level that could be reached before you start to see an impact on stream wildlife. So for chloride, it's about 50 milligrams per liter. For specific conductivity, it's 300. And for water temperature, it's 20 degrees Celsius. So just a reference to relate this more to wildlife conditions. But even though we have this, there's still a lot of dots. It's really hard to see. So let's say you were interested in just looking at CCP01. If you click on that site on the map, everything will update and the data will filter to just show that site. And what's also helpful is if you hover over a point, it will tell you the date, the site, and the value, which is very helpful. Sometimes it's hard to tell what the numbers are. And when you do that, it updates the data for all 3 graphs. So you can look at the temperature for that site, the conductivity, and the chloride concentration. But let's say you were interested in comparing more than one site. You wanted to see if there are differences between these 3 sites on a tributary to Cobbs Creek. There's this little tool in the corner. It's a little lasso tool, and you can just draw on the map and select all of those sites, and the data for all of them will pop up on the graph. So then you can see, you can take a look and see that in May, CCP02 was warmer than CCP01, but in March, it was the opposite. And it's just an interesting way to start to compare what's going on at sites and look more locally at what might be happening in the watershed. So when you're done looking at your sites, you can click anywhere on the map and it will clear your selection and go back to showing all of the data. There are a couple other little things in here. If you want to scroll through the sites alphabetically and pick out your site, you can open up this tab on the left and click on a site, and it will pop up here and then filter on the map. You can click on as many sites as you want, and they will all pop up. When you're done, you just click the reset button, and it goes back to
we're not taking it tonight.
And so the one other little tool that I haven't quite figured out when this will be useful, but it could be useful, is if you click on a site and if you click on its little icon in the legend, it will filter that site out of your data. I would prefer it did the opposite, where you could click on the site and it would just zoom into that site. But for some reason, the software engineer behind this decided that was not the right way to do it. So it's a kind of funny little functionality, but in case you're wondering what clicking on a site does. So this is just a very brief overview, and I encourage you to go into the dashboard, take a look at your data, let us know if you have any questions. But are there any just broad overview questions right now that I could answer?
Could you show again how you lassoed?
Yeah, yeah, no
'Cause that was
problem.
interesting.
Yeah, so we, to lasso, you'll have to close this tab. So you can click this little arrow on the left. That will close the tab, and then you click the tool up here, and you can just draw a circle and select however many sites you want. So it's a nice way to be able to do it just geographically. And then you can just click on the map to clear it. So it's a cool, can like that, start doing all sorts of different comparisons and investigating. So we just hope that this will be a more interactive way to look at the data. It will help you be more engaged and understand better what's going on at your site, what's going on at local sites. Any other questions? All right.
And I just
Yeah.
want to say how awesome this is and how amazing you are for being able to do this. I think
you.
this is so amazing that you can take all this information that's just a bunch of numbers on a paper and make it so visually easy to work with and you know, help us understand it. I think this will be great for people that want to maybe take something to their local municipality and like have the data right there in front of them. It's publicly available. They can take the link, show others how to look at it if there's interest or a question about water quality in a certain area. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. It was a fun thing to make. It's exciting to see. It was a new tool I discovered and was exciting to see what it could do. I hope you all have fun with it too.
So since the sodium and chloride levels are really way above what we are looking for them to be, is there any program in place that's addressing any of this?
All right, I think that might be a better question for you.
Yeah, that is the $1,000,000 question right now. And there are a number of programs that are working to get a foothold. And we're fortunate that we have Stroud Water Research Center in our neck of the woods. They're really leading the charge in a lot of the municipal education piece. And so they have been working really diligently to help municipalities understand why it's worth making the investment from the rock salt trucks to brine trucks. But the reality is that there aren't actually any strict regulations for the amount of salt that it can be used in the wintertime. So while Pennsylvania is lagging behind, I know Maryland has recently changed their limiting their maximum amount of chloride for the streams. States like Vermont have been leading the charge for years now. So there are programs that exist in New England and the Mid-Atlantic, but it's going to take, I think, a little bit longer to get Pennsylvania up to the speed that we should be for protecting our waterways from salt. So very long-winded, not really.
But
Lauren,
having this kind of data, I think, will help move us in the right direction. So you guys are doing such important work because having this is clear, you know, a message, it's a story for people who might be influenced by, you know, making those decisions.
and Aurora, have we started telling this story and to whom?
We're working on that. So that's like, we kind of, the idea, and Lauren, you can jump in anytime, but like the idea is to kind of get this group going, establish what we're doing, and then working towards that. That's the goal, is finding ways to share this, make it relevant, help you guys, you know, our volunteers and to become, you know, advocates that can speak about this, because now you know and you understand, and you might, from a casual conversation to a friend or relative to going to an EAC meeting, depending on, you know, what contribution you want to make. But you know, our job is to hopefully make the data easier to understand and interpret so we can help spread the message. But we're still working on that. We are definitely not there yet. And we're always open to feedback from you guys. Like, that's why we're sending out the survey, right? We want to know, how can we make this easier? Or how can we make this better? We're learning and growing this program right along with you. So if you guys have feedback and suggestions, by all means, let us know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I did public relations my whole career, and it seems like it's time probably to tell the story in that kind of a format, and have that ready, to tell with the, particularly with the saline. And what does it mean that, that's the kind of information you'd have to provide for what does it mean to have passed the stress threshold? What does that mean to the fish? What are we seeing as it goes up each of these 50 mgs, right? But you have the data. It's just you look at that and it's like, whoa, we got a problem here. We're on the wrong side of that line.
I think that is excellent feedback to translate it to, like, once we get to this level, it's impacting this particular species, or once we get to this level. And yeah, that's a great thought. Thank you.
And before we did this, has anybody else done this? How unique is this set of data in the state or in the region?
Yeah, I think to the best of my knowledge, there are not very many data sets that look like this. The monthly data is pretty unusual in the realm of water chemistry. Usually you would sample quarterly, especially if you're hitting 30 sites every month. That is something that's out of the realm of possibility for a lot of organizations. However, I think groups like the Isaac Walton League of America really did set the stage for us to model, and they target snowstorms, which is a little different. We're looking every month, rain or shine, safe conditions permitting, of course. And so this is capturing, right? Some of these sites have elevated salt year round. And that is a really big concern. This isn't what maybe we thought it could have been initially, where we see these spikes right after snow is applied, or snow melt starts to occur and there's runoff coming from the landscape. But there are some sites like, I don't know, Anna, who that lime green site is that's kind of elevated up around 200 all the time. Yeah, so DC, I see, yeah, which is Ithan Creek.
Up here.
Yeah, it looks like maybe there's one site that dropped low enough to just hit that stress threshold. So something like that tells us that there is a buildup of fluorides in the soil, probably, which is the result of over application for an extended period of time. So I saw, Marianne, you put in the chat asking, when do you go to your municipality? And this would be a great example. This is right downstream of a pretty large paved area. There's a big parking lot, a municipal building. There's a parking or a parking lot for a park, and then it's a decent sized development. So this would be an opportunity maybe to bring it to, I think it's Radnor Township, and say, hey, we're seeing these elevated levels. Have you looked at your salt application? Is there any educational materials we can distribute within this community where we're seeing this elevation? But, I think this platform that Anna has built is so powerful and so cool, and it's brand spanking new. We published it just today on the website. So I think between Anna, Aurora, and I, we haven't really dug into it as deeply as, we will be in the coming weeks and months. So if you start playing around and you see something that is interesting, let us know, because you'll probably find it before we do. But yeah, any motivation that you're feeling to share this story with friends, neighbors, municipal leaders at EAC meetings, I think can help really just elevate the awareness around stream health, because it's something we just go blind to because we're so blessed with so many creeks in our area. It's easy to forget, you know, when we're driving to work that we cross 9 bridges both ways, which means that's 9 bridges that get salted in advance of storms. And just those little spots might be areas that we can adapt some of our behaviors around, you know, as communities that might make a difference in the long run. But yeah, so lots of opportunity with this awesome new data dashboard.
I encourage you to take a look, explore around, and let us know what you find. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Lauren.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. I was playing with that all day today, and I was just so excited to be able to share that with everyone. All right. So with that in mind, we have some tips and tricks and reminders about chloride strips. So especially knowing that we are hoping to be able to share our data set with the state, making sure that we are staying on top of our quality control, our QC practices, right, is super important. And so I think everyone, myself included, has made some of these mistakes in the past. So just a quick few reminders and then a pop quiz, but don't worry, you won't be graded. So first thing, most important, which I'll probably say on every slide, it's the most important, so sorry in advance. We want to make sure that the lot number on the little baggie that holds your chloride strips, the lot number on your conversion table, and the lot number that you're writing down on your data sheet all match. I know a number of people have had 2, 3, 4 lots of chloride strips at this point. So the next time you're going into your container looking for your chloride strips and your conversion tables, check to make sure that you don't have any that are out of date. If you do have an old chart, throw it away. It is not precious. We will not be mad. If you throw away the wrong one, call us and we'll get you the right one. It's totally fine. But it'll help cut down on the confusion. It has happened in the past where someone had 2 conversion sheets in their bin, they grabbed the wrong one, and the numbers are just a little off. As fate would have it, one of those times was there was a weird number on the data sheet, and when we went to verify everything in the pictures, we couldn't. And so we had to just discard that data point from the data set. You work hard to collect the data, so we want to make sure that all of your efforts count and are being represented on all of our now beautiful graphs. So just take an extra 5 seconds to make sure that all of your numbers match and we're not mixing up different lot numbers and potentially introducing mistakes into our data set. Sorry, this is a little pixelated. But the next thing, and this is definitely something I've been guilty of in the past, is rushing and not allowing your chloride strip to process fully. So the orange indicator on the crossbar at the top needs to turn totally black, so we know that it's been fully run. If it is not fully black and you notice that, give it an extra couple of seconds, 15, 30 seconds, and make sure the dye moves completely across that orange bar. If we start recording the data before that strip turns totally black, there's a chance that we're actually undervaluing how much chloride is in the water. And then that shortchanges ourselves if we're not actually accurately capturing our salt problem. So take an extra couple seconds, and if you see that your strip isn't turning black at all, you can throw away that strip and try with another Quantab strip and see if that works better. If not, call us, we'll get you a new lot no problem.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. All right, quiz time. Is this chloride strip properly processed?
No.
No.
No, yeah, it's not properly processed. A plus work. So you can see that there is still orange on this strip. This needs an extra like 10 seconds, 15 seconds to process fully. All right, how about this one?
No.
Nope, not even a
Not
little
even
bit.
close.
And this was a faulty strip actually. So that ink pack never went off. So we had to discard this and then just get a whole new set of strips out to this volunteer. So this had been left in the water for like 10 minutes and nothing ever happened. That happens sometimes. That's okay. It's not you, it's the strip. But if that happens, flag it on in the notes on your data set. Use another strip. And again, if it's a problem with the strips, we'll just replace them. All right, how about this one?
Oh.
Nope. Yep, so it moved a little bit, but not all the way. This is very likely going to undervalue the actual chloride value, with it only being partially run. All right, how about this one?
Not quite.
Not quite. Yeah, so this is actually a faulty strip. It's a little hard to see in the image, but the ink pack actually leaked out into the wick.
Right.
So this is one, if you start to see that black or purple dye leaking down into the wick where we would read the values, something might have gone wrong. It might have gotten crimped or bent at some point. So feel free to discard it or note it that something went strangely with this analysis. Okay, how about this one?
Good.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, this is great. This is beautiful. This is what we want to see every month from every volunteer. This makes us dance with joy. So in this picture, we see that the crossbar indicator, totally black, beautiful, fully processed strip. And then in this image, we can see it's in focus. We can read the lot number. We can see the nice, bright, beautiful peak. This is just A plus work from this volunteer. Okay, next, mistakes that can happen. Every now and then we'll get a reading and it's super tempting to want to estimate it at like 1.5 or 2.7. So it's really important these on our Quantab strips, these crossbars are in even intervals. So it runs at 1, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2.0. Even though it's really tempting to estimate it at an odd number, it's not a good practice because we can't be sure if it's 1.5 or 1.46. So always just round down to the bar value that it crosses. So your numbers, your Quantab numbers or Quantab values should always be even. If you report an odd number, we do go and look at your pictures to see what it should have been, which is a step we check. It might not seem like it because I know you don't hear from us all the time, but we do go through all of your pictures. And we do validate all of the data. And that's a huge task that Anna and actually our volunteer Susan Lee have been helping with. So it's great. We love your pictures. We love seeing your faces in them sometimes too. So every now and then, if you want to post something that's a selfie, it's always appreciated. So what would the value be from this chloride strip?
1.4.
1.4. Beautiful. That's exactly right. So if you had rounded this to 1.5, you get a slap on the wrist. That's not quite right. All right, so the final and the biggest error that we see, and I've again done this myself, is not taking a picture that has all of the important pieces for our data collection. So as I hinted before, we want to see that fully processed crossbar. We want to be able to see the peak on the chloride strip, and then we want to see that conversion table. It is so nice when it is in focus and all of those pieces are there, because it makes our lives very, very easy when we're doing our quality control checks. Is this a helpful picture to submit to the data?
No.
No, no, it's not. No, this makes us so sad. And it's always a little frustrating because when we go to validate the data is when we're like, oh no, we don't have the conversion table, or it's out of focus. It's like, shoot, you did all the work. We want to make sure that that data is counted. So make sure that you give us a beautiful picture with all of those pieces: lot, peak, crossbar. Yes, this makes us so happy. Fill our hearts with joy. Um, and then as a final piece, please make sure that you're taking a picture of your full data sheet after all the data has been written down. We don't get to see many of you as often as we would like. So just in case your clipboard with the last year and a half's worth of data gets blown into the creek and then lost forever, we'll always have a digital backup. My middle name is redundancy, so we just ask that you continue to upload these pictures. I know it's a little extra work, but it makes all the difference in the world when we're going back and checking on things. And especially in 10 years, when we want to say, was the temperature really that high in February 2022? We can go back and say, yes, actually, rather than be concerned that we may have just missed something when we were double checking all of the data when it was entered. So any questions on any of the chloride strip tips?
And one thing I'll just add is that it's just important to make sure you're taking care of your chloride strips in between sample periods. So if they get wet or if they get really hot, that's when you start to have issues with the ink. So just make sure you're not storing them in your car, that you have them in a dry place where they're not going to get wet. And then you should have fewer issues, hopefully.
Hey, Lauren,
Yeah, Heidi.
the the Quantab strip, and it has like 2 columns of all the information that you need. And we have always been in the left column. So I don't know. I think we're putting our strip maybe over the numbers that are on the right side. Should we try not to do that?
That's totally fine, as long as we can see the relevant numbers. So if you're getting readings at like 2.2, you don't need those super high readings that are like 9.8. But we do need to see the lot number. So as long as
Okay.
that is visible, that's perfect.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. All right, any other questions?
Hmm.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, everyone. All right, so I included a little blurb in the last e-blast about identifying wildlife in our watershed. So the Darby and Cobbs Creek watershed has a reputation for being pretty gnarly, but we know already that that's not consistently true throughout the entire watershed. And there are areas that are absolutely thriving, and some that even have really sensitive wildlife, like the freshwater mussels that were documented in the headwaters. So we want to encourage you, as you are spending more time and it's starting to get nice out, to feel free to help us understand more about what's living in the watershed by documenting it. So you can put in the notes section of your data sheet Or it would be awesome if you wanted to practice your IDs by joining apps like iNaturalist or eBird, where you can upload the data and then have other naturalists in the area on those apps validate it. So iNaturalist, when you upload a picture and say, I saw freshwater mussels, other specialists will come in and say, actually, you saw freshwater clams. And then it helps you really start to learn how to do these IDs. There's also another great app called Merlin, Merlin, that if you're starting to learn how to identify birds, you can open the app and start a recording, and it'll tell you in real time what the bird calls you're hearing are. So as we're spending more time at our sites and becoming so intimately familiar with our locations, it's a really cool way to get a better understanding of who actually lives here, besides us. So one of the great places in the Darby Cobbs watershed for wildlife is at John Hines National Wildlife Refuge at Tinicum. And this is the bottom of the Darby Cobbs watershed. So everything that's happening in our watershed does actually influence what's happening in that preserve. And John Hines is really interesting because it's part of the freshwater Delaware tidal system. So there are tides that move through, and you see a lot of really interesting wildlife there that you don't see very many other places in the Philadelphia region. So I know a lot of folks have some, well, not a lot, there are a handful of sites that are down at this part of the watershed, and it is really, really interesting to start understanding how that tidal movement of the water in even the Darby changes some of our water chemistry information. But I took a little time to go poke around in eBird and found that in the last 2 years, 282 different species of birds have been documented at John Hines. That includes some of our regular favorites like Canada goose and bald eagles, as well as some more less commonly seen birds like the pied-billed grebe, the black and white warbler, the Blackburnian warbler, and the cormorant, the double-crested cormorant. And every now and then at John Hines, you'll see something really unusual or hear reports of really unusual wildlife, like the spoonbill that was blown in a couple years ago. So it's a cool place, and it's a really incredible gem in our watershed. It's heavily studied because it's so close to the city. A lot of people go there for walks and things, but there's not necessarily a limit to where some of this wildlife will go. So getting familiar with our watershed residents, especially in the lower watershed, I know we see many of the migrants that are recorded, especially like the warblers, come up to the Rushton Conservation Center. So there is a chance you might see them throughout the entire Darby Cobbs watershed as they're moving during their migration. On iNaturalist, there are over 1,000 species that have been documented at John Hines. So really some cuties, things like muskrats, painted turtles, buttonbush, which is a phenomenal wetland plant, to some of our more common species that we see in open spaces like monarchs, which are rapidly declining, but still pretty visible, American beavers, and the American mink. So there's all sorts of cool things to be seen, and a lot of these animals you really don't see out and about, but you'll see the tracks, you'll see the memory of them in the soil and in the snow. And I should say that there's a caveat that there are 1,000 species. That does not mean there are 1,000 native species. So a great example is the snakehead, which is a pretty gnarly invasive fish that popped up in John Hines 10 or 12 years ago and now is moving throughout many of our smaller tributaries. So if you see, especially after a flood, snakehead have been found crawling around in the mud. They have the ability to move across land. So if you see something like this, give us a call and we'll help you report it to the appropriate authorities, because there's concern these fish are moving around quite a lot and eating some of our native fishes. So they're voracious. They're apparently pretty tasty though. So eating our invasives is always a potential answer to our problems. But you don't need to be a master naturalist to start learning how to ID wildlife. And winter is a great time to practice, especially we actually had snow this year, which is lovely. But looking in the snow and frozen mud is a great way to start practicing identifying animal tracks. So a couple tips for identifying who's been wandering through your site. A good first step is to see if you can count the toes. So in this sample mystery footprint, we have two toes. And then you want to look at the stride pattern. Different animals move in different ways. So some move pretty straight, things like dogs, white-tailed deer, kind of go in a straight, maybe a little bit of a zigzag, but fairly in order. Many of the weasels, things like mink and otter, are more of a like bounder. They sort of slink across the landscape. Are my favorite, beavers tend to waddle, so you see more of like a waddly path in the snow. And then things like squirrels and rabbits will be bounders, so their prints are all together in groups. So we have two toes in a fairly straight zigzag pattern. Does anyone want to guess what our mystery animal is?
Deer.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful work. I figured we'd start easy and get progressively harder. So all of the prints here were for mammals. However, sometimes you encounter birds. And this
Yeah.
is one of my favorite tracks to run into. So it has 4 toes, 3 in the front, 1 in the back, and the size is slightly larger than my hand. So does anyone want to hazard a guess what monster came trucking through the snow?
A great blue?
It was a great blue heron.
Wow.
Yeah. They move around a lot. They're not really migratory, and they do come stalking through in the wintertime. So they're always, I think, every aspect about this bird is impressive, including their big old snowshoe feet. All right, so this is the hard level.
Mm.
So it looks like we have 5 toes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little pigeon-toed. These prints are fairly large. Does anyone want to guess what this is?
A beaver?
Yeah, Sal, it is a beaver. The giveaway on these prints is that these back toes are slightly webbed, so it
Yeah.
pushes all the snow down together. These, when the snow starts to melt, these get really, really strange looking. So beaver prints are easy when they're fairly fresh, but if it's in the mud, there's a distinguishing big flat drag across most of the prints where their tail follows through.
Hmm.
But they all have kind of this like pigeon-toed waddly walk,
Hmm.
as you can see here. And that big paddle of a tail does tend to obscure some of the tracks when it's in really soft mud. But if you start seeing tracks or are working on identifying them, please let us know. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm not very good at it, but it's always fun to take pictures and see kind of what's living in the neighborhood. All right. Any questions on identifying wildlife or any of the apps that I mentioned? And I'll be sharing links to all of the resources we've mentioned in the follow-up email with the link to this recorded call.
that animal track thing that you've got up, is that something you can send us?
Yes, I'm happy to send that, and I believe that this was in the last e-blast.
Or was
Um,
it? Oops.
I think that's so I put so much information in those emails. But I'll send it out again for sure.
Lauren, does the iNaturalist, if you, can you just send a photograph of prints? Will someone identify the print versus picture of an animal?
Yes, you have to include a guess, and
Okay.
I can say from experience, if your guess is wrong, you get feedback much faster than if your guess was right.
I'll be getting a lot of fast feedback, I bet.
Well, that's, I mean, you learn really quickly that way, I think. All right. So one kind of macabre fact, if you find something dead, don't try to move or clean up the decomposing carcass, especially if it is starting to get really rough. If it is at your site, say if a deer gets hit by a car and dies in the creek and you go and you need to sample there. If you can move upstream to collect so you're not getting the flush of unsafe bacteria and hazardous materials onto your person. But if it's really nasty, just let us know and you don't sample that period. If you find a dead bird, say a dead pigeon or a warbler or a robin, you can actually report it to a new community website called dbird.org. And this is a crowdsourced data collection tool that's working on documenting some of the bird strikes in urban areas and rural areas to see if we can identify any patterns in the frequency, timing of bird strikes, and hopefully to start cultivating opportunities for adjusted either development patterns or like wind blinds or things like that, especially on high rises. So you can use dbird.org. And I will say that if it's fresh, not rotting birds, and if it's fully intact, you can actually, if you feel safe doing it, put it into a Ziploc bag with a note where you found it, the date you found it, and I will take those things from you and put them in our freezer here at the Rushton Conservation Center. We have a freezer just for dead things. And then periodically we bring those frozen animals to the Academy of Natural Sciences where they will perform necropsies. So looking at the carcass to see what was the cause of death. Was it disease? Was it starvation? Was it a window strike? But if you can't if we can't meet that day, then that carcass needs to go into a freezer or else it will start to decompose. So if you're not comfortable having, like a dead bird in your freezer by, your microwave dinners, just report it on dbird. However, if it is something that you feel confident in freezing and then bringing to me, I will I will sadly take your dead animal to put in the freezer.
Lauren,
So-
it's much more likely I would find a dead bird, unfortunately, in our yard. Do you want that, or do you want it exclusively from?
I will take
Right.
all your freshly dead birds.
You
Yeah.
will. Wow. Okay, I'll remember that. Yeah, you may see one, unfortunately.
I will say that the bird program at Willistown Conservation Trust, they share the news that we will take dead birds, and we go probably every 2 or 3 months to the academy because people will bring, especially during migration, all of the birds that are hitting buildings, dying in the yard, and we keep the academy well stocked with pelts.
Okay.
Great. Kind of a sad thing, but something that is important to address because we've never really talked about what happens if you see something like that at your site. But the most important thing, if it feels unsafe, if it is a large dead thing, don't try and move it so you can get to your site. Go upstream or find another, either come another day or just don't sample for that window. Cool. Probably should have started with that because that's kind of a sad thing to end on. But very exciting that our next meeting will be in person. It's going to be at the Rushton Conservation Center, which is, I know, kind of a hike for some of our friends in the lower watershed. But it'll be Saturday, April 13th from 9:30 to 11:30 in the morning. We'll have some snacks provided, and we're hoping that this will be a great opportunity for folks to meet each other and start building up some camaraderie, as well as our data set. So there will be reminders upon reminders. I have a lot of exciting ideas. Aurora, Anna, and I have been discussing different ways that we can make this a fun opportunity. So hopefully we will see you in person in April. And thank you all so much for your time and attention. It was just so wonderful to see all of your smiling faces, or I'm assuming smiling names. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Any final questions, thoughts, concerns?
Hi, this is John Ferry. I just wanted to talk about an observation I made at my North Brook run. So in addition to our normal, observations, I did an off cycle a week before. It was during rain, which was about a week after the snowstorm. And so I just went and did the readings, and the chloride level, the CI ppm was only 58, and it really surprised me because I was expecting it much higher. This was in line with all the normal observation dates. And so then I did my Isaac Walton also that day at my place in Chrome Run, and my reading was 551, which was a record for that site. And so it seems like in that Northbrook run, with all that development they did there after Haverford State Hospital, they must not be, directing any stormwater or anything into Northbrook Run.
Yeah, so this is interesting, and I'd like to actually look at the data, but I have a gut feeling about what happened.
Okay.
So you said it was raining, right? When you did your
it was
Northbrook?
finished. It had rained earlier. The rain had stopped. And what I've seen at times is like after rain, after storm, a lot of times it, washes a lot of the salt right into the streams. And when I've been doing the Isaac Walton stuff, so I usually see really high readings there.
So I'm wondering if you may have just missed the peak.
Okay.
So when there's higher percentage of impervious surface, like there is around Northbrook,
Right.
that peak can come really quickly and be gone really fast because
Okay.
everything gets washed off all at once.
Okay.
Whereas in the Crum Creek site, it's lower, I'm assuming lower impervious surface, which means it takes a little more time for some of that chloride to just make it down to the creek.
Okay.
So depending on what the landscape looks like immediately around your site and upstream of that watershed, those peaks can come really quickly. It's easy to miss them.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes it can also be that it may still have been elevated, but because the flow was higher, it diluted those the salt, and so it kind of artificially lowers the concentration. So it might still be elevated, but because of the volume of water, it reads as lower.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So I would like to take a look at that data though, because that's really interesting. Because I would super love if the answer was that they changed the way that they were directing water off of the landscape.
Right.
To actually benefit the creek, because what a beautiful idea for development. But my gut feeling is not that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, next time I'll try a few more off cycles to see if I can catch any kinds of peaks or not. So, okay, thank you.
Well, that's super cool. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions, or concerns? All right. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out with me tonight. It's such a joy. And yeah, you'll be hearing from us in the next couple of days with all of the resources that we shared tonight, as well as the recording. All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right.
Thanks. See you
Bye-bye.
Saturday.